Welcome to Legally Speaking. I'm your host, Sophia Haynes. Legally Speaking is a public service of You and the Law, a nonprofit whose mission is to provide information and resources to empower you in your legal affairs. While we provide legal information, it's in no way intended to be legal advice. So if you have a legal issue, make sure you retain the services of a licensed professional attorney. This month in December, we're talking about resources and alternatives to going to court, or organizations that if you do need to have some type of legal intervention, that those organizations are available for you as well. And today we've decided to talk about mediation. There's a lot of information about, or misinformation about, or what mediation and arbitration is, but it is a viable service that you can use to resolve your legal disputes in a way that's beneficial for both sides. So we asked Ms. Tracey Edwards, a certified mediator here in the state of Georgia, to come and give us some information about mediation and to kind of inform us on this great right that we have. Welcome, Tracey.
Hello. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Tracey Edwards, and I received my undergraduate degree from University of Michigan, and I attended Thurgood Marshall School of Law, where I received my Juris Doctorate degree. And I am a registered mediator.
Oh, great.
In the state of Georgia.
All right. So tell us, what is mediation?
Mediation is alternative legal...
alternative dispute resolution.
Dispute resolution, which is used typically to avoid going to court and litigating the case. It is a voluntary process in which two or more parties, they will hire or solicit an impartial person, which is the mediator,
such as yourself,
yes, to resolve their conflict and their dispute.
Okay, so you kind of assist them in getting to a resolution they probably could have got to themselves if they weren't so involved in a situation. Is that kind of a fair synopsis?
Yes, the mediator role is to facilitate communication between the parties, to help them generate solutions to get their own settlement agreement, something that they can live with.
Okay, now we hear a lot about mediation, and you talking about these mandatory arbitration agreements and contracts. So what is the difference, if there is one, between mediation and arbitration?
There is absolutely a difference between mediation and arbitration. Mediation is a voluntary process where typically it is not legally binding unless the agreement states so, and unless it was court ordered or some other exception to the rule exists. But arbitration is generally binding. And arbitration is another form of alternative dispute resolution, in where the parties will subject themselves to the arbitrator, the judge, deciding who will win and who will lose, and giving an award at the end of the process.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. A mediation, we're coming together and we're basically working with a third party to resolve our issue ourselves.
Yes.
But if I have an arbitrator, then that third party is actually making a decision after hearing both sides.
Yes, they are going to hear the facts of the case and impose a judgment. Okay,
so is there, I can see a judgment, you're talking about a judgment after an arbitration. So is there some type of agreement, a legal agreement that comes out of a mediation, or can a legal agreement come out of the mediation?
Yes, at the end of the mediation, if the parties have successfully worked through and resolved the issues, and they can come to a settlement agreement, which both parties agree to follow. However, a lot of times that's not legally binding unless it's finalized, and it depends on if the court is involved. But mediation will not prevent parties from pursuing litigation should things not be followed through, and not if there's no follow-up, or if the parties are not complying with the settlement agreement that they did reach in the mediation.
So I reach an agreement in mediation that I can enforce if the person doesn't do what they said they were going to do in the agreement.
That is correct.
Okay, so let's talk more about the mediator's role. Okay, when these people come together and they decide we want to mediate, what is this process the mediator is going through? What is their role in that whole process?
The main role for the mediator is to facilitate conversations between the parties, find out what the issues are, and see if they can work towards a solution that both parties can live with the parties can live with, because sometimes it can be more than two parties. And it's really a good time for the parties to be heard. It's not an effective process for those who want to impose some type of judgment on parties. It's more of a compromise. I'm going to give up a little bit of something, you're going to give up some things, and then perhaps we can come out with the end result that both of us can live with.
I can imagine that being a little challenging for the mediators at that point. I'm pretty sure emotions are running pretty high.
It can be, but the mediator has several techniques that they can use throughout the mediation to diffuse the conflict from escalating and diffusing hostility. Very commonly, a mediator will use something that is called a caucus. And during the caucus, the mediator may take one of the parties out of the room and go in a separate room and obtain some information from them. Maybe it's something they're not clear on and they feel that the other party is withholding the information, or they may just want to tell the other party, I don't think you're being very reasonable, and begin to have a heart-to-heart discussion with them without the other party hearing. Those conversations will be confidential unless the other party agree that it can be discussed when they return back into the mediation session when all of them are present again.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So if I have a dispute with somebody, when should I consider mediation? How would I know that my case would be a good one for mediation?
Mediation should be considered as an option when you are thinking about taking your dispute to the courts. If your dispute is affecting a personal relationship that you really want to preserve and maintain. And also too, if you would like to avoid the costs and time associated with litigation, it's definitely a great vehicle to use in those scenarios.
How does a dispute reach a mediator?
The great thing about mediation is that it can be informal and it can be formal. Mediation,
what's the difference?
Informal is, I may participate with a volunteer program, maybe at my local church, where I may be having some issues with another parishioner or someone in the community, and we decide to use this impartial person to work out the dispute. And if we cannot resolve it with the mediator, we are still free to pursue other legal remedies that are not, because mediation is not binding.
Now, I think you might have touched on a little bit. Why would I mediate versus taking a case to court if I have a legitimate dispute contract and this person is just not paying me? So why would I choose to mediate if I can just go to court and have it automatically enforced?
A lot of time it depends on how much your dispute would result in award in court, and if you feel you will be able to collect it. Depends on if you want to preserve a personal relationship with the person who you're having a dispute with. Those are very important factors to consider before deciding to actually sue someone. Okay,
well, we're going to take a break here. And we come back, I want to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the mediation process, what individuals can expect out of this mediation process, and maybe a little mediation in the workplace. See if that can help us resolve some of that.
Absolutely.
We'll be back in a few seconds. You're tuned into Legally Speaking, a public service of You and the Law. You and the Law is a nonprofit whose mission is to provide legal information and legal resources to empower you in your legal affairs. If you would like to have a question answered or a topic featured on Legally Speaking, feel free to contact us online at www.youandthelawtoday.org. You can also sign up there on our website for our mailing list, as well as follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, with every right comes responsibilities, so know your rights and accept your responsibility. Welcome back. We're talking to Certified Mediator Tracey Edwards about the benefits of mediation in resolving our legal disputes. Now, Tracey, prior to the break, we talked about what mediation is, the difference between mediation and arbitration, and basically your role in helping individuals resolve their legal disputes. Now I want to go into what exactly are the key components of mediation, and what can I, as a agreed party, expect in the whole mediation process? So let's talk about what are some of the key components of mediation, that whole process that I can expect in mediation.
Yes, mediation is governed by usually an ethical body to ensure that ethics and confidentiality in the process is being presented and preserved in a way that meets the body's regulations. During a mediation, you can expect for it to be confidential.
Okay, so how confidential is it? Is at some point, because I know you're the attorney-client, and if I'm committing a crime, it's not necessarily confidential anymore. So what can I expect in a confidential lane?
It's as they desired and as they agree. Whatever the confidentiality components of the mediation that is discussed prior to the mediation taking place is one of the housekeeping items that a mediator will go over in the very beginning when introducing themselves and explaining the process to the parties involved. And as in the law, if something is divulged during the mediation that would break the law, someone is admitting to breaking the law, those things are not protected under the confidentiality of the mediation. Or if someone is threatening or doing something that will create harm, that would not be preserved under the confidentiality.
But other than the criminal action type stuff, is the confidentiality pretty much agreement between us that are involved in a dispute? Do we have a discussion on what we're going to keep confidential and what we're not? How does that work?
Well, pretty much the whole process is confidential unless something falls under the exception of the law.
Okay, so I can expect confidentiality as a part of this process.
That is correct.
Okay, what about, is it voluntary? Can somebody make me go into mediation if I want to go to court?
Another key component of mediation is that it has to be very voluntary. That means any party is free to leave, stop participating for a reason or no reason at all. It has to be voluntary.
Okay. What about is there a requirement that I collaborate or anything like that?
Yes, mediation works best when the parties collaborate and work together to resolve their settlement agreement. So that is encouraged throughout the process, and that's another instance of where the mediator may take a party to the side if they feel they're not collaborating with the other party, because at that point it's a waste of each other's time if they're not going to work through the issues and compromise.
Any other components that anything about neutrality or how can I expect balance, and how is that a component of it?
Yes, a key component is that the mediator must be neutral and impartial. They cannot favor one party over another party, nor can they favor a particular result of the mediation to occur and push something to angle. Now, there are times where a mediator may be hired, and it is agreed beforehand that they give what they feel will be a fair or reasonable settlement in a judgment. But once again, that's something that is agreed beforehand. Typically, the mediator is just there to facilitate the conversations and keep things moving that the parties do arise at agreement.
Okay, so is there a point where I may be in court and may see some mediation? Do the courts use mediation in any way?
Yes, the courts will. A judge does have the judge is able to order parties to mediate, especially if they feel that there is some things that need to be worked out before they even come back into the courtroom for the judge to hear other issues or facts of the case. So he may order mediation and say, hey, I want you guys to work it out. I'm going to give you 30 days to do so. And a lot of times the mediation work in that case, especially when they know they have to go back to the court, and that the mediator will tell the judge, how the parties
or cooperated
in the process. So it can be very effective that way.
What about your small claims type stuff, your Judge Mathis, Judge Judy type courts that you have? And that's the magistrate court here in Georgia. And of course, you look, this is a national show, so you make sure you can look in your own individual states to see how that's working. But do we see sometimes that even some of those small claim judges will require them to go out and try to mediate the situation in the landlord tenant or civil disputes like that. Do we see that a lot?
We do, especially here in Georgia. There is landlord tenant court, which is a mediation process where the tenant and the landlord will participate in mediation. And in Fulton County specifically, I believe that program is, the mediators are law students.
Oh, okay.
Who are interested in practicing mediation once they graduate. So that's one way that mediation occurs. It occurs in domestic proceedings. It is mandatory here in Georgia that the couples participate in mediation during the filing of a divorce, especially with custody issues and things of that nature. Also, mediation is used in small claims. Fulton County have a business court that uses mediation to help people resolve contract disputes.
Oh, okay.
And also there are several churches that are now incorporating mediation in as part of their ministries to help their attendees
resolve their disputes instead of going to court.
Because they may have a belief that along with the Bible, that's scripture that says that you don't sue your brother. So
it's an alternative.
It's another alternative
to get your need met. Okay. Now I want to talk about, because I'm seeing a rise of mediation in the workplace.
Yes.
So can you tell our audience how it's being used, even resolve some of the issues that you're having with your employer or maybe with another coworker? How is it being used in the workplace?
Yes, because the work environment is very diverse. You have unique personalities, budget constraints, different cultures in the workplace. It's very effective because, as you know, conflict can occur anywhere. So I think it's very critical for organizations to have to provide actually conflict resolution training to their employees and managers when possible, and at a minimum at least have some type of conflict resolution program in place where the employees and the managers are very clear and it is defined at how conflict will be handled that is consistent with the organization's goals.
So what does that look like in actuality?
Well, that typically looks like it can be as elaborate or as basic as the organization's resources permit. It can be, I think every conflict training program that an organization has, it should have basic negotiation skills, communication skills, and definitely a focus on active listening, where the parties can begin to listen to one another and respond accordingly that will be consistent with that organizational goal and culture.
So is it normally geared toward doing conflict resolution skills for the employees, or is it a official program, I guess is what I'm trying to say, within the workplace? Have you seen any of that anywhere?
I've seen both, and I'll talk about informally.
Okay.
There's several organizations that will offer modules where their employees can get online and see how to work through conflict, and it'll be different scenarios played out, and how to address upper management, how to address a difficult peer, and things of that nature. Or there are currently organizations that have an official program where the manager, typically the human resources manager will be contacted by either the employee or the manager who may want to mediate an issue in the workplace. At that point, the human resources manager would contact the mediator and they would set a time for that issue to be mediated.
Okay, so what types of issues in the workplace would I have an opportunity to have mediated?
Several. You could mediate attendance issues. You could mediate interpersonal.
Well, I came to work on that?
Yes. Meaning that if you have seen that someone is not following the attendance process and they're not following the rules of the company, the manager has tried to speak to them, they're coming back from breaks and things of that nature prior to, as part of maybe their process of
before formal discipline.
Before part of their discipline process.
Okay.
They may use to have a mediator come in and discuss what are some of the issues of you not coming to work, or missing deadlines, or coming late back from break, or just a whole host of the surrounding not being punctual. That's very common. I've seen that. Also, too, it may be issues of interpersonal skills, where someone may be viewed as abrasive by their team, and the employees may get together to say, this kind of behavior offends me, and they get a chance to listen and talk it out and get a chance to get heard.
Okay. Any other type of areas that we could mediate? Is it maybe performance evaluation? Is that one of those issues, or is it more so the interpersonal stuff that we see?
It really is the interpersonal things. I've even seen a case. I've even been part of a case where it was really unique, where the parties involved had been at the company for 10 years plus, and in that time span, it was actually, I think, closer to 15 years. One of the couple of the parties remember having a manager that was very abusive to them, and the person quit, went on to greener pastures, whatnot, and then later came back like 10 or 15 years, and they actually contacted Human Resources and filed an actual grievance in this particular case
for the person coming back.
Yes. And said the reason why they shouldn't come back and they wanted to have a mediator involved was because this person had previously lied on their job application and wanted to discuss about how toxic they were when they were at the company.
Interesting.
Yes.
And that case was chosen for mediation.
And it was appropriate for mediation, and a resolution was reached in that particular case.
So any other areas in the workplace that we could do mediation for?
Typically, it's when you're having a conflict between a manager may want to bring in two co-workers who aren't working together well, and it's necessary that they get along to have an effective and working relationship to maintain that. Also, too, it may be a situation where the employee may want to ask the manager to sit in a mediation session if they feel that the manager has not been responsive to their request to work with them on certain issues, and feel that it needs to be, before they go up the food chain, so to speak, try to sit down and talk to them with an impartial party to see if they can come to a resolution before going up the chain of command through their organization process.
So do the employers make that readily available? Is it more private employers or government employers that you see make that process available to their employees?
Increasingly, it's happening in all the environments, in both the private sector and the public sector. And the government is just readily embracing it as quickly as the private sector.
Okay.
So yes, there are several programs throughout the nation and in the state of Georgia that they do have a workplace mediation program in place.
We're getting to the end of this show. It was amazing how fast the time goes. Is there any other areas of mediation that we didn't cover that you think or any important aspects that we need to kind of bring the public aware of in the whole mediation process?
Right now, we have a lot of parents who are concerned about bullying.
Okay.
And their children being bullied.
And we just had a new law passed on that. Yeah.
Yes. And so right now, collaborative mediation is being used in the schools, where the parties are soliciting mediators, because they say if the kids can't figure it out, let the parents help figure it out, and the school officials. Okay. So that's been embraced very rapidly here in Georgia and among the states.
Wow. So any other things in the educational arena that we use mediation for?
It's far-reaching.
Yeah. So it can be used for a whole lot of stuff.
It can.
Okay, so how can I get more information about mediation and whether it's right for me and components? And I live in Oregon, so how could I find more information about mediation?
Well, mediation is finding out information about mediation is simply as quick and easy as a Google search. But the first place I would recommend is that each state has a dispute resolution office, and I would suggest that they start there. There they will find out who are some mediators who are available, who's registered. If they have a complaint, if they participated in mediation and they want to complain, file a formal complaint about the mediator's behavior, felt they were not impartial during the mediation, they can also do so there.
Okay.
So that's the first place I would recommend everyone start.
Okay, so what if I want to be a mediator? Like, I can help people resolve problems and do that for my family all the time. So how could I become a mediator if I wanted to become a mediator?
Once again, you will definitely start with your office in your state dispute resolution. They will tell you how many hours are required, what classes are required, who are some of the endorsed or recommended providers of mediators
Mediation training.
Mediation trainings that are endorsed by the state. And how many hours and things of that nature. They don't give cost or anything that specific, but they will point you in the right direction of who you can contact to obtain the training.
So typically I'm going through some training course. Is there a test after the training course, or if I finish the course and I get a certification, then I can become a mediator? Is that what it is?
It varies state to state, but typically there is no test. You just complete the coursework and do training hours and doing observation and participating and getting ethical requirements.
And then I can become a mediator.
And you can become a mediator.
And help people resolve those problems they're having.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, well, there you have it, folks. We talked about mediation today and how it can be a very useful tool to make sure that individuals can resolve their legal disputes in a way that they can maintain relationships and resolve their problems and enforce the agreements that they agreed to. Because it's important to have an agreement in place anytime you provide any type of service or anything along those lines. Thank you so much, Tracey, for coming and sharing your expertise with our audience. I know that they have been very well helped, and we may even see a couple of mediators come out of this process.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, Legally Speaking is every Sunday at 6 on youandthelawtoday.org. We keep the current show that airs on Sunday up the entire week. We also maintain an archive of past shows. So if you missed the business law series, or you missed a criminal law series, or you want to know about employment discrimination, or how you can trademark your ideas and things of the nature, we have all of those shows online where the information is readily available. And of course, we always provide resources for you to get more information. Because remember, with every right comes responsibilities. So know your rights and accept your responsibilities. We'll see you next week.